So an interesting thing happened today about feedback, and it has to do with a site called Bluesky. But first, I'll just say, feedback, you get out of it what you put into it and what you encourage. And so for me, people will tell me not to read the YouTube comments. God, you hear that all the time, right? I read all the YouTube comments. I reply to a bunch of them. Sorry if I don't reply to everyone. I have work to do. But with that, I engage purposely because I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the feedback. And it's funny because YouTube and TikTok's always been pretty positive, which is this whole other thing, right? Like those comments start positive, where the YouTube comments started negative and then I kind of cleaned house. And now they're positive, but they're not the same. We're talking to gamers and we're talking about design. We're talking about a lot of the things that affect both groups of people. I don't know. I'm not separating the people. They're randomly separating to be on TikTok or YouTube, but yet they're different. And I really find that kind of fascinating and interesting, and seeing what hits. And, when somebody was being grumpy and I called them out for being grumpy and I kind of thought I was making a joke, everyone on TikTok laughed at it. And the people on YouTube were like, hey, dude, you said, don't talk to the people that make the noise, talk to the people that you want to talk to because of the bigger group. And you were right. But yet equally the TikTok people laughed because it was like, it's right. It's interesting. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's not. Like the YouTube people now get my little bumpers for the videos. I can't do that on TikTok because people would just tune out on TikTok because that would be like 1 second. They'll be like, I want to go see cats. Well, my new one works. But okay. But so here's the thing on Bluesky. So Bluesky opened up to everybody. I don't post on Twitter anymore. I won't get into that. But so Bluesky opened up to everybody. And so now there's going to be a flood of new users. So one of their engineers linked to a post by this PhD, was like, hey, I have a guide to getting started on Bluesky and how to use it. And my response was like, no, don't do that. You don't want that feedback, because that feedback is like, did you do the thing I told you to do? Right? It's the game design where, hey, what if I made a game and how to play it was you had to come and ask me how to play it every time versus you playing it how you expect to play it. When you elicit feedback, what you want is you want people to use it the way they expect it to work. And if it doesn't, either it's because you've done it in such a cool new way that you don't need the old ways, or you failed. And so by telling people how to use your system the way this engineer was on Bluesky, and they're well-meaning, they're trying to be helpful, they're actually hurting it, because you really want people to be like, hey, what are this feeds thing? This is stupid. I want hashtags. And they were going to do hashtags now because people yelled about hashtags, right? And my feedback was like, no, just use the site. And when it doesn't work the way you expect it to work, complain. Like, that's how you fix it. Because I'll tell you what, if the only way to work and the only way to get feedback is to follow this guy's guide to using Bluesky, people are going to stop using it and you're never going to know why. You're never going to hear it because they're like, oh, I don't want to do that, right? Because it's always some engineer who thinks they know how to do it better. I mean, I still hate using Gmail because they won't give me folders. I think they do now, but like they wouldn't at first at all give you folders. Like, oh, that's a dumb way of doing it. I'm like, yeah, that's the way I'm used to doing it. That's the way everybody does it. Here's the reason why you don't have the same use case. Everybody has different use cases. And so you want to get that feedback. You want to have that. Like, what were your expectations? How did you expect this to work? Did it work the way it worked? Could you figure another way to do it? Oh, is this way better now that you learned that way? Like, those are all super valuable feedback. And you lose that when you say, nope, here's how you do it. Here's the guide, follow the guide. Oh, when you complain, I'm going to be like, well, did you read the guide? Because the guide says to do it this way. And why did you not do it this way? And that's just horrible, man. That's just the wrong way to collect feedback. So with that, you got to be people can complain. People can give you punches in the face. People are going to be a little raucous. That's okay. Like, there's valid feedback, right? And sometimes there's not valid feedback, right? When you begin your feedback to me about the Anacrusis as, it's the woke for dead game, I'm not going to read anymore. Like, come on, you're just a moron. Or God knows on Twitter, I think anytime I've ever been confused by what someone was talking about and I followed it up with like, hey, what are you talking about? Can you explain? I've always been disappointed with the answer. Because they're, maybe it's language barrier. I don't know. It's my fault. I only speak English. But there you go. But when you have something small like that, when you still have Bluesky, which is still starting out, you don't want people to have to adhere to your rules as much as you want people to express what they want out of the site. Because if you build that, they will stay, right? It's the old thing of when designing sidewalks in a college. I forget which college did it, right? But they waited till people wore down the paths where they wanted to walk, and then they just paved that over versus making square paths that nobody ever walked on, right? Like, amplify what people want to do, unless they want to do bad stuff, of course, right? But if they do bad stuff, then they're being loud about that, and you could counter that. You have that understanding. But you never want to limit your design by just pointing to a book and saying, this is the way to do it. This is your guide. That is just a horrible way to do it. And the engineer who pointed to this guide was well-meaning, and the person who wrote the guide was well-meaning. But man, this is the kind of thing that well-meaning bites you in the butt all the time. Like say that I said butt versus ass, 'cause I don't know if YouTube's mad if I say ass. Maybe I'll say ass again. But right, like, you got to just try. You got to push on things. You got to have an understanding, and you got to get that feedback. You got to be willing to get that feedback that says you're wrong. This is stupid. This is a bad idea. Now, you don't want to get it from. So a classic example of this thing I'm going to say was about Left 4 Dead. When we were doing a Left 4 Dead update, we would update during the day while we were at work. So everyone else was at work. We'd get this feedback. This is the most horrible update. This is the worst thing ever. We'd ignore it because we knew those were people not playing the game. They were at work. And then they would get home, and then by the evening, the feedback would be like, this is amazing, this is great, this is super, hey, do you think about this change? Hey, this would make it even better, right? It's because you want people actually using it. And so now Bluesky has this great opportunity of a flood of new users who are going to talk about expectations and ways things work in what they want out of it. And they shouldn't stifle that by giving people a set of rules to follow.